Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching 90 Day Fiancé. Let's get to the show.
We can find you a lawyer. You know, we've been through this once before. We can go through it again.
But okay, I'm not concerned about the green card because I know I have children and I would like to support them in America. Get a job while I have enough amount to support me here.
All right, I'm a little confused as to what she meant by that. So she says she wants to support her kids in the United States. She wants to get a job. Is she saying with Colt or without Colt? Kind of like sounded like she's saying without Colt.
But okay, I'm not concerned about the green card because I know I have children and I would like to support them in America. Get a job while I have enough amount to support me here.
How come none of that had me in there?
I want to put you before of me.
You put me behind you. It makes me feel like a piece of for me thinking that Larissa just wants me for a green card, that she has no interest in our marriage. I think Larissa just wants a new life, and the green card is just one way for her to get that life.
So that's always one of the questions, or it's often one of the questions when we watch this show. I think that's what this whole show is premised on, right? But it blossoms into so much more. Is she really in love with him, or is she just using him for a green card? I don't know. With other couples, I always thought, just based on my own gut feeling, there's no way to know, that there was real affection between people. Even Ed and Rose, I thought that. I say that because a lot of people suspected that they didn't really have real affection for each other. Lisa and Usman, a lot of them. I thought that, at least at the beginning, genuine affection and attraction to each other. With this couple, I'll just tell you from my own gut, and there's just no way to tell. It's just a sense that you get when you watch. I have yet to feel that feeling inside of me that they actually like each other, even on a fundamental level. The only time when I kind of felt that way was at the tell-all last season where they were in each other's corner, but that was a pretty isolated event. Now, maybe they're having a lot of affectionate, very bonding moments that they're just not showing on the TV show. Absolutely could be. But I definitely don't get that sense. Now, I've worked with couples in the past, years ago, who, because of their traumas, they actually were in a survival mode. So let me explain survival. I've talked about it before, but when you've been traumatized sufficiently, there is a mode that people will go into since the day they're born, and they never get out of it, which we might call survival mode. They're being abused, they're being neglected, there's chaos, and from a very early age, they learn that they have to survive. They can't be happy. They can't think about their needs. They need to stay alive. They need to avoid pain. They need to avoid being abused. And so they're in a constant state of survival. Now, it's tempting to think about someone like that on it looking like they're anxious all the time. They don't look anxious. One of the ways that you survive as a child in an abusive situation is you don't let on that you're afraid, because if you let on you're afraid, you might actually get abused more, depending. But people will look very calm, but on the inside, they are not calm. They're basically in a constant state of stress. And I will ask clients sometimes who look this way. I'll say, how often, tell me about your distress level. And depending on their level of self-awareness, sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, well, pretty much the lowest that I get is like a 3. That's like the best I can get. I don't know if I've ever even been a 1 or a 2. And really, my average day is probably 5 or 6. And it'll be surprising to me. I've learned not to be surprised, but it's a little surprising with some people because they'll laugh, they'll have good times, they seem to have a good life, but because of their early experiences, they've learned they need to be hypervigilant about their environment relationally such that they can avoid being victimized. And in their adult life, they're actually in a safe situation, but they haven't allowed themselves to realize that because they learned if they let their guard down, then that's when the bad things happen. So they just always keep it up, which means constant vigilance and constant fear, constant readiness. You're always at the ready. Think about when, I don't know, there's some kind of an emergency, like there are forest fires nearby. It'd be hard to sleep at night. I'm guessing that at any moment, you're just like at the ready with your car keys ready to go. There's things like that. You can just never relax. You can never really sleep. You can never really enjoy yourself. You can never really go on vacation. And you can never really fall in love, because to fall in love and to be totally enmeshed in the love and enjoying someone and opening yourself up to someone, you have to not be in survival mode. Well, some people, they are in constant survival mode, and so they will engage in romantic relationships, but there's always a barrier to them opening up and being vulnerable and taking care of someone else that's vulnerable and having that space where you can really just be yourself. And the relationship will look like a relationship, and that they're married and they have kids and they do date night and they go to therapy. But they've never really actually bonded, because both people, because usually these people actually attract each other, that they've never actually let their guard down because they've been in a constant state of survival mode. This couple might be one of those couples. I don't know. The evidence, although pretty circumstantial, is that I haven't seen any real affection or evidence of affection between the two of them. And they are very, very quick to be triggered by each other, and they have high conflict. So when you're in constant survival mode, one, you deny bonding, which is one of the antidotes to conflict. I mean, one of the best things you can do to reduce the intensity of conflict is if you love each other. Because then when you kind of have little conflicts, you're like, but I love them so much. I love him so much that I can forgive that. Because there's so much goodness. If you don't have a bond and little things start happening, then what's holding you back from going down a road of negativity about the other person? So one, the conflicts will become big because that. The other is that because you're in survival mode, you're looking for things to react to, because you knew early in life that you had to fight against injustice against yourself. Otherwise, you'd be victimized. And so any kind of incursion from the other person, you got to fight back. So I wonder if this couple is in that category. It's just an hypothesis. As I always say, total speculation. I would have to ask them. And even if I was on the mark, there would probably be a lot more nuance to what I'm saying, to be like, well, you kind of got that right, but there's this other thing. That's what I do with my clients. I throw things out there, and then they refine it or they reject it. And then, we just keep collaborating on the assessment process. So I would want to do that with them. Mainly because when people discover that about themselves, they're like, you know what? I think I am in constant survival mode. That's interesting. It gives us hope for the future, because a lot of times people in survival mode, they think, because they've never not been in survival mode, that is the mode everyone's in. And when we identify it as such, they're like, oh, you mean there's another way? You mean there's a deeper, more relaxed state that I could be in if we put therapy to good use? And I could actually just relax? You mean that's possible? That's a novel, wonderful future for people that you can provide people in therapy by identifying this. So that's why I'd want to put it out to them, because maybe it would help them in this moment. I don't know. Let's continue watching.
And if I get in line with Larissa and do whatever she wants, I'm invited to the table with her. But otherwise, I'm not. I regret what I did. But what's important is that you and I stand together side by side.
I regret what I did, but you and I need to stand side by side. What does that even mean, dude? You're sorry that you took her phone away, but you need to stand by my side? What's the message there? I think if I was to put his statement into the best of all worlds, he's saying, I want to work. I think what he frequently is trying to say and failing at is, I think you overreact, and I don't want you to do that anymore, because I think that's how our conflicts begin, is when you overreact. And so I think he's trying to dumb that down or make it sound nice by saying we need to stand side by side, or we need to work as a team. And I don't know if she is receiving that. So let's see what she says to that. Hey, deserving listeners, as you know, I'm constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. One of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp.com. So if you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to BetterHelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the /Kirk, because you get 10% off your first month, and it helps us out. I get a lot of emails from you saying that you're looking for a therapist. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist. but I know it can be really hard to find a good one to work with. Like I said, one of the options available to try is betterhelp.com/Kirk. And you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide, which is amazing. I've been told that you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message with your counselor anytime. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And I've been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy. So go to betterhelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month of therapy today.
But I won't go through what I did before. The 3 months of hell, essentially.
Hell? Hell of what?
Waiting after we got married, waiting for your first trial.
Don't try to say to me that I made your life a hell. No, the situation that you bugged to me make our life a hell. I'm angry with Colt because he's trying to blame me.
So this is unfortunate. I can't say I'm surprised. They're both blaming each other, and instead of trying to heal, trying to figure out a way to move forward, try to figure out a way to get along, how to give each other the benefit of the doubt, how to communicate differently about their needs. I can't imagine this ending well. It seems to be just getting worse and worse, and it's really hard to watch. It's sad to watch, particularly because she has kids. I'm guessing they're being protected from this information, but I don't know, somehow that just makes it harder for me. Let's continue watching.
I will tell you one thing. I hope that this is the second and last time that I got in the jail. The next time, I'm done with you. I await the trial. I await my green card. If you don't change your behavior with me, like accepting your
demands?
Your wife. No, just listen. If someone is talking, you need to listen.
But the problem is you don't communicate with me. You rant and rant.
Can you listen now?
And rant.
Can you listen now?
Rant and rant and rant.
Yeesh. Ugh. So there's always that threshold that couples will cross, and nothing good is happening from their conversation. I work with a lot of couples that will do this. I don't have couples right now that do this, but I have in the past. And it's nothing wrong with it, but it is worth identifying as a clinician. It's like, oh, wait. So there's two options that I tell my trainees to do. One is to interrupt them and to identify and say, I think you have entered a mode of conversation that is only destructive. So we need to either derail this and change the subject, or do some relaxation techniques, or change the way you're approaching each other, change the narrative. You know, we need to change something, otherwise damage is going to occur right here in my office. So that's one option. And there's a lot of different roads you can take to try to help people de-escalate. Emotional regulation, I statements, all those kinds of things. The other route that you can take as a clinician is to assess. And I recommend that clinicians do this perhaps in the beginning. There's this compulsion that novice couples therapists will have to stop these kinds of fights happening in their office. It's like, well, but they're fighting. It's bad, right? It's like, well, yeah, it's not great for them, but if that's what they want to do with their time in therapy, it's not like you have necessarily the right to stop them. I mean, if that's what they want to do. The other thing is it's very useful to watch them in action because they're fighting all the time at home. So it's very good information for you as a clinician to watch how they fight. And you can sit back and watch and just see, you know, what's going to happen. And you can note the different back and forth and what's happening for people so that you can know what happens outside your office, because it's a lot worse outside of your office. Whatever version of conflict you see in your office, it's 10, 100 times worse outside. So whatever damage is happening in your office has been happening for a long time and happens much worse outside the office. So it's not great that they're damaging each other in the office, but it is very helpful to the treatment if you get a good idea of what that looks like. Because sometimes they'll come across and you'll have an idea of the way the conflict looks like, but then when you see it in front of you, you're like, oh, that's surprising. I didn't know that person had that ugly side. So that's what I have to say about that. But it's very unfortunate. They started out in the right direction-ish, and I don't know why I get my hopes up, but I did.
Rant and rant and rant and
Okay,
rant.
when you stop, I will talk to you.
And then you ignore me on your phone. I try to take care of her, and I love her, but ever since Larissa arrived to America, she's created nothing but problems.
All right, so we see a little bit into their conflict. The way it probably looks 100 times worse when the cameras aren't there is that he kind of apologized. He got 2 out of 10, which isn't many, but it's in the right direction, kind of. She, I think, was starting to spoon feed him. Look, this is how it feels, I think, in an attempt, in a roundabout way, for him to empathize with her. He didn't do that. He says, I need you to, stand by my side. And then she starts to escalate because I think the message is, I need you to not be you, or I need you to obey me, or something along those lines. I'm guessing that's how she receives it. And then she starts to escalate. She starts to say her normal things. And then he, interesting, we haven't seen this behavior on camera. He's like, no, you need to listen to me. You rant and rant and rant. And she's trying to talk. And he's like, you rant and you rant and you rant. And I don't know how many times he said it over and over again. And then she's like, okay, if you're not going to let me talk, then I'm just going to go on my phone. Now, I'm guessing both of them, if we could hook them up to biometrics, that they would be both escalating in terms of their stress hormones and whatnot. And so they're both getting flooded. They're both not thinking straight. And that happens to people. And anyway, so she goes to her phone. And then he says, and then you go to your phone all the time. And you just ignore me and you won't listen to me. Well, I'm guessing, total speculation, the fight that happened where the police came, there was some version of that where it was much more ongoing and bigger than that. And that's when he took the phone and disconnected all those things, because he was trying to get her attention or get back at her or something. And then someone found out about that on the internet, and she didn't feel safe because he was cutting off her communication from the world, which is justified. And then the police came. So total speculation, but that does give us a little bit of insight into how they fight.
And I have to be there to solve everything, from money to arrests to lawyers. I have to sacrifice my own well-being, my own happiness, just to get this marriage to continue. Honestly, I don't know if I can live like this anymore. I don't think I can do anything else here. I don't want this scenario to escalate. I don't want the police to be called again. You know what I mean?
Are you treating me?
I'm not.
Right. So it kind of looks like a threat. He has a very subtle way of communicating, by the way. And that sounded like a threat. And what is he threatening her over? That she needs to obey him or something? Like, what's going on here? Now, if we extend this and imagine what might be happening when the cameras aren't on, and times that by 10, yikes. All right, well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Let me know what you think in the comments. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.